Ladies and gentlemen, imagine, if you will, a mandala, a circle of wholeness that radiates from the core of your being, connecting light and shadow, conscious and unconscious, in one luminous totality. In that sacred center lies your true self. When you embrace that self not as something distant or idealized, but as your present, living reality, you become a beacon, and in that illumination you no longer chase love. Rather, love is drawn to you, authentically and inevitably. Imagine the soul not as a straight line, but as a spiral, moving ever inward, drawing closer to a center that was always there. To walk this spiral path is to undergo a process that does not strive toward perfection, but toward totality. Each step inward brings the fragments of the self, once scattered across unconscious shadows, back into relation. It is not the perfection of personality that attracts the other, but the quiet gravity of an individual who has become whole unto themselves. In this silent work of becoming, the psyche becomes magnetic. The person who has turned inward, who has suffered the discomfort of self-confrontation, becomes an individual, not in the modern sense of an isolated ego, but in the ancient sense of indivisibility, of being undivided within. This person does not seek love as compensation for their lack, but allows love to emerge from their surplus. When one no longer needs to be completed, one becomes capable of true relation. Most people seek in others what they cannot find in themselves. They confuse attraction with need, love with dependency. They look to the outer world to fulfill the inner void. But the unconscious has its own laws, and it is not fooled by masks or roles. If one has not made peace with the inner world, every relationship becomes a battlefield for unhealed wounds, for rejected selves that now speak through the mouths of lovers. We do not attract what we desire, we attract what we are. That is the secret most wish to avoid. But when one accepts the inner contradictions, the tension of opposites within, there emerges a silent harmony, a psychic integrity that needs no audience. This kind of person does not shout for attention, nor are they consumed with the hunger to be loved. Their presence alone radiates something numinous, something unmistakably alive. It is this quality, this mysterious inward order, that draws others in without effort, without strategy. The world senses when a person has made a pact with their soul. Such a person no longer chases illusions. They are not seduced by masks, nor do they present one. They have died to their need for approval, and have been reborn into authenticity. And because they are no longer divided, they attract others not with performance but with truth. The attraction is not always romantic. It is often the attraction of resonance, of mutual recognition between two beings who have tasted the same depths. It is as if the unconscious says, "This one too has walked the path." The alchemical transformation of the self, what begins in fire and dissolution ends in clarity. It is this clarity that others feel. They may not be able to name it, but they feel its pull. In a world of surfaces, the depths call louder, and it is depth that attracts depth. One who has met their own darkness does not fear it in another. They can love without rescuing, connect without clinging. They do not confuse merging with intimacy. Because they are rooted within, they allow the other to be. This is not to say the individuated person seeks solitude forever. On the contrary, they are more capable of relationship than anyone, but the nature of their connection is different. It is not based on unconscious needs, but conscious choice. They are not drawn to flattery, nor are they interested in projection. They seek reality, and reality, once you have tasted it in yourself, becomes the only form of intimacy that matters. Thus the paradox reveals itself. When you no longer need someone, you are ready for someone. When you are no longer seeking completion, you are prepared to meet another as they truly are, not as an answer to your longing, but as a mirror of your wholeness. You do not lose yourself in love. You find someone with whom you can remain yourself, while sharing the sacred fire of mutual becoming. Such is the quiet miracle of this path. It is not about attracting the right person. It is about becoming so real, so whole, that the right person has no choice but to find you, not because you are perfect, but because you are true, and truth, in the end, is the greatest seduction. There is within each of us a darkness we refuse to see. We exile it to the margins of our awareness, pretend it is not ours, and cloak it in silence. Yet it does not vanish. The psyche is not deceived by avoidance. What we do not confront within, we will encounter without, often in the form of conflict, disappointment, and inexplicable patterns in our relationships. The person who irritates us, the one we idealize, the one we despise, all carry fragments of ourselves, split off and cast into the outer world. This is the mystery of projection. We see outside what we cannot yet accept inside. To integrate the shadow is not to become morally pure or psychologically perfect. It is to become whole. The shadow is not evil in itself. It simply contains that which the ego refuses to identify as part of the I. It is composed of instincts, impulses, emotions, and traits that do not fit our conscious self-image. For the kind person, the shadow may contain cruelty. For the generous, it may hold selfishness. It is not the nature of the content that is dangerous, but repression of it. What is denied grows stronger. What is unloved seeks attention, and eventually it speaks, not in words, but in projections. Relationships become the battleground for the unconscious. One finds themselves drawn repeatedly to similar dynamics, partners who wound in familiar ways, lovers who awaken dormant pain. We think this is fate, but it is the unconscious seeking expression. We are not cursed. We are haunted by what we have not yet welcomed home. The partner who belittles may reflect our own repressed arrogance or our unconscious need to feel small. The lover who abandons may echo our own disowned desire for freedom. The more emotionally charged our reaction, the more certain we can be this is not merely about the other. But to recognize projection is not to rid ourselves of it. That would be naive. It is to begin the labor of taking back what we have cast out. It is to say, this too is mine. When I feel rage, I do not say the world has made me angry. I ask, what in me has not yet been expressed? When I feel jealous, I do not condemn myself. I inquire, what desire have I denied that now seeks attention? These are not moral failures. They are messages from the unconscious, calls toward integration. To love another without projection is perhaps impossible, but to become aware of projection, to hold it consciously, is the beginning of real intimacy. For now, I no longer ask the other to carry what is mine. I do not need them to complete me, save me, or mirror only my light. I can see them as they are, not as an image conjured by my longing or fear, and I can begin to relate not from illusion but from truth. This is where shadow integration transforms love. When I own my own darkness, I stop blaming you for showing it to me. I no longer collapse into victimhood or inflate into moral superiority. I see that what I react to in you is a teacher of what I have yet to face in myself. And now, instead of using love to escape my inner world, I allow love to deepen it. The one who has integrated their shadow becomes magnetic, not because they are without flaws, but because they are real. There is no pretension, no false humility, no righteousness, only a quiet strength that comes from knowing I have walked through myself and survived. This kind of presence allows others to do the same. In the absence of judgment, the soul exhales. In the presence of someone who has met their own abyss, we feel the permission to explore our own, and so we see, love is not merely a feeling, it is a crucible, a fire in which the projections are burned away and the true self forged. But this can only happen if we are willing to endure the discomfort of self-revelation. If we insist the other is always the problem, we remain bound to the illusion. But if we ask again and again, what part of me is being shown here? Then each encounter becomes an invitation to wholeness. This is the sacred task of love, not to find perfection in another, but to discover, through the mirror they provide, the hidden terrain of our own soul. When the shadow is welcomed, it loses its compulsion. When it is integrated, it becomes power, not power over others, but the power to live undivided and in that undivided state we become capable of love that does not cling, project, or possess, but sees, accepts, and transforms. There are patterns within us older than memory, deeper than thought, shaping not only how we see the world, but how we relate to it. These patterns live in the unconscious, yet they are not personal. They are archetypal, primordial images inherited through the collective psyche, shaping the very architecture of experience. Among them, two figures stand as central guides in the mystery of love. Anima and the Animus. These inner figures, though often misunderstood, influence our relationships more than we dare imagine. We do not simply fall in love with a person. We fall into the gravitational field of these inner images, projected outward onto the beloved. The Anima, the image of feminine within the man, and the Animus, the image of the masculine within the woman, are not mere psychological curiosities. They are the soul's mirror, reflecting to us what we lack, what we yearn for, and what we fear. When they are unconscious, they govern us from behind the veil. They draw us toward illusions, fascinations, compulsions. A man may find himself obsessed with a woman, not because he sees her clearly, but because she carries the Animus projection, an image of his own inner life, idealized and made flesh. A woman may be drawn to a man whose voice echoes with certainty, because he embodies the Animus, that voice of inner authority and opinion within her. But such love is not yet love, it is enchantment. In this projection we see not the person but the symbol, and when reality begins to intrude, when the beloved fails to live up to the inner image, we feel betrayed, abandoned, disillusioned. Yet the betrayal is not theirs. It is our own unconscious that has deceived us. The image we loved was our own soul, seeking recognition in the face of another. The journey, then, is not to abandon love, but to reorient it, to turn the gaze inward and meet these figures where they truly live. The Anima and Animus are not enemies. They are bridges. They connect the conscious self with the deeper layers of the psyche. To encounter them within, rather than merely projecting them outward, is to begin a dialogue with the soul. The man who meets his Anima begins to feel more deeply, to dream more vividly, to open himself to intuition, beauty, vulnerability. The woman who engages her Animus learns to think with strength, to speak her truth, to embody clarity and direction. In this inner integration, we become more whole, not by eliminating difference, but by reconciling it within. Only then does relationship become something other than a projection screen. When we know our inner feminine or masculine, we no longer need another to embody it for us. We can see them as they are, not as extensions of our inner fantasies. Love becomes less a longing and more a meeting. Two individuals, both rooted in themselves, come together not to complete each other, but to reflect, challenge, and grow. This is love without enchantment, love that sees with both eyes open. Yet the task is not simple. To meet these inner figures often requires descent into dreams, moods, irrational impulses. The Anima may appear as a seductress, a child, a guide, a sorceress. The Animus may emerge as a preacher, a soldier, a critic, or a sage. We must learn to differentiate these images, to understand when we are being pulled by them and when we are integrating them. It is a slow process, requiring patience, honesty, and the willingness to see ourselves in the mirror of relationship. But this is the only way out of the cycle of blind attraction and inevitable disappointment. Those who have made peace with their inner counterpart radiate something rare. There is a balance in them, a quiet fullness. Their love is not needful, nor is it guarded. It flows from a center that is no longer divided. They do not seek in the other what they have denied in themselves. They offer what they have found through the labor of inner reconciliation. And this offering, this mutual recognition of depth, becomes the soil in which true intimacy can grow. We fall in love with reflections of our own soul, but only when we have made those reflections conscious can we truly love the person who stands before us. Otherwise we love not them, but the forgotten parts of ourselves they awaken. To integrate the Anima or Animus is not to lose mystery, but to transmute it, from a source of confusion to a wellspring of connection. When we know who within us loves, we begin to understand what it means to love another. not as a savior or a symbol, but as a soul. Love, in its deepest sense, is not the meeting of two halves searching to become whole. That idea belongs to the realm of romantic fantasy, born of an unconscious hunger for completion we have not yet found within. True love does not fill a void, it reflects a fullness already present. It is a mirror, not of what is lacking, but of what has been discovered in the depths of the individual soul. Only the one who has turned inward and dared to face the fragmented pieces of their being can stand before another without illusion, without demand, and truly love. When the soul is divided, when the unconscious remains unexplored, love becomes a projection. The beloved becomes the screen upon which we cast our longings, our unhealed wounds, our forgotten desires. We are not truly seeing the other, but rather some internal figure, an echo of the Anima, the Animus, the shadow, or even the parental imago. We are trying to meet ourselves through another, and this inevitably collapses into disappointment. The illusion shatters, and we are left again with the painful feeling of absence. But this absence is not the other's failure. It is the reflection of the distance we still maintain from our own inner life. The path to love is therefore not outward, but inward. It is a descent, a turning toward the unconscious, the neglected, the painful, the divine. We must dare to see what lies beneath the persona, the mask we wear for the world. The journey to wholeness is not comfortable. It is a confrontation with contradictions, with paradoxes, with the many voices that live within us. But through this alchemical process, something sacred is born, an inner unity, a reconciliation of opposites, a center that is not swayed by the winds of external need. When a person has done this work, when they have embraced both their light and their shadow, they carry a presence that cannot be feigned. There is no longer the desperate search for validation or completion. They are no longer hungry for someone to rescue them, nor are they seduced by the idea of rescuing another. Their love does not emerge from lack, it flows from abundance, and this love, born of wholeness, does not cling, does not manipulate, does not demand. It allows the other to be. It is precisely this allowing that becomes so transformative, to be seen not as a projection, but as a person to be loved not for what one represents, but for who one truly is one of the rarest and most healing experiences in life. Yet only the one who has loved themselves in this way can offer it to another. We cannot give what we have not yet found, if we have not stood in front of our own soul and said yes to all that we are. We will continue to seek that affirmation in the eyes of others. In this way, love becomes a mirror not of the ego, which always wants to possess, but of the self, which only wants to be. When two people meet from this place, their relationship becomes a sacred vessel, not for completion, but for reflection. The love they share does not blur their individuality, it sharpens it. Each becomes more themselves in the presence of the other, not less. Each supports the unfolding of the other's wholeness, not through sacrifice, but through presence. But this kind of love requires courage. Courage to be seen, the courage to see, the courage to stand without masks. It demands a willingness to abandon fantasy and to meet reality, not as a limitation, but as the only place where truth can live. It is not always dramatic. It does not always feel like ecstasy. Often it is quiet, steady, rooted, but it endures, for it is built not on the shifting sands of unconscious need, but on the solid ground of inner integration. There is no formula for attracting this kind of love. There is only the ongoing labor of becoming whole, each act of honesty with oneself, each moment of embracing the rejected parts, each step toward authenticity. These are the silent preparations for love. And when it finally appears, it does not complete you. It reflects you. It shows you who you have become. And through this reflection, it invites you to go even deeper. Thus, the greatest love story is not between you and another. It is between you and yourself. And when that story has been lived, truly lived, then love, when it comes, is no longer a search. It is a recognition, a meeting of two flames, each already burning. So let this be your invitation to turn inward, to embrace your entirety, not as half made, but as wholly becoming. For in the alchemy of self-love, you forge the magnetism that draws authenticity, depth, and true connection. When you love yourself enough, you do not seek someone to complete you. You stand complete, and in that stance, you attract another who is whole beside you.